And a TGIF, everyone, and good Friday wishes to those of you out there. Happy Easter weekend for those celebrating. Jeremy Plonk here with the First Call podcast from Express Bet and First Bet, joined by our guest handicapper again this week, Scott Shapiro. We're hoping to get Jeff Siegel back sooner than later, hopefully, but Scott's doing a great job filling in. And Scott, we've got 15 days until the Kentucky Derby. Tomorrow is the 2-week out mark, and really the big workouts for the Kentucky Derby are tomorrow. I mean, really, the one that's the week before the Derby is kind of that final maintenance move where you hold your breath and hope everything's okay. This is the one where you want to see where your horse is going. So this is a big weekend for the Derby hopefuls.
Without question, we talked about before. I know you mentioned Sovereignty amongst those working, as well as Burnham Square tomorrow.
Yep.
But yeah, like you mentioned, the maintenance drill the last time out, that might get the hubbub from the media. But because everybody's there or close to there at that point. But this is the one that means the most to the connections and to folks like you and I.
We'll see some updates on those workouts probably on our Tuesday show. Be sure to check out the podcast there on It's Official, where I'll look at some of those weekend Derby workouts for you and analyze those. But this show is about handicapping each and every Friday, and we've got 8 stakes races for you. For those of you watching on X or on YouTube, thanks. Share it out. Comment in the comment section. Help us grow the audience for the First Call podcast. For those of you listening on our longtime audio channels, here is the lineup of races that Scott and I will handicap over the next half hour or so. We'll start out at Santa Anita with the Santa Maria Stakes. We'll go to Oaklawn, where it's Oaklawn Handicap Day. Second straight big weekend in a row in Hot Springs after Torpedo Anna last week in the Apple Blossom. To Keeneland we go for the Elkhorn and the Ben Ali, where it'll be the final Saturday of the Keeneland Spring Meet. Remember, that meet ends next Friday, and then they'll move to Churchill a week from Saturday. At Aqueduct, the Bay Shore 7-furlong sprint for the 3-year-olds, the headliner, and it is Preakness Preview Day at Laurel Park in Maryland. Sister Track Pimlico's just for 15 days away from the Derby. That puts us at 36 to the Preakness Preview Day, the King T. Leatherberry, the Henry S. Clark, and the Federico Tesio. If you're playing that card at Laurel on Saturday, be sure to do so with First Bet and Express Bet, because we've got a hit and split on the late pick 4. A lot of times the hit and split promos are for first rewards points, which can be turned into cash. This one starts out as cash. We're just playing for extra money on Saturday at Laurel. $2,500 up for grabs. If you can take down the late pick 4, however many players on First Bet or Express Bet hit the late pick 4 Saturday at Laurel Park, you'll split that $2,500. So if you're the only person, you'll get your pari-mutuel winnings plus $2,500. If 5 of you hit, you'll each get $500. If different numbers of you hit, I'm not doing all the math, but I'll just do the easy math. I mean, it could be a nice return that we see sometimes on these hit and splits. So be sure to take advantage of that, and always opt into the promos when you play with First Bet and Express Bet to make sure that you're playing for the best juice you can in all of our promotional awards. All right, let's talk some handicapping now, Scott. Let's get to the Santa Maria feature race Saturday at Santa Anita. Today is opening day at the Great Race Place for the Summer Hollywood meet that begins today. Friday, Saturday, Sunday racing typically at Santa Anita for this meet. The Santa Maria at 1 mile and a 16th on the main track, grade 2, $200,000. We've got Ricci in here. We don't have Cavalieri, who's kind of been dominating the distaff division in Southern California. I believe she's headed to Churchill for the La Troyenne and could be a massive showdown there if she meets up with Torpedo Anna. So her stablemates are behind, but they're still the headliners in this race. Ricci and Splendor for Bob Baffert seem to have this field over the barrel.
They sure do, and I really struggled to get excited about either of them, to be completely honest. I think, for a 1 mile and a 16th race, there's not a ton of great form at this grade 2 level going the 2-turn distance, but both the Bob Baffert runners will look to stretch their speed out a little bit, if you will. Ricci might be 6-5, where Splendor is 3-2, but I think Ricci's is pretty much of a standout. I spent a while trying to beat this 5-year-old mare, who I think you liked last time and or a couple of times ago. I know she put in a good effort for you whenever you liked as a non-favorite. She's going to be the favorite in here. I don't fully trust her at 1 mile and a 16th, but I think against this group, she's going to be very tough to get by late with just who she has to take down.
I liked her last time, and you're making me go back and watch the video of the Beholder Miles. So I'll close my eyes. Let the rest of the fans watch this one. Tough beat for Ricci.
3 furlongs out, Ricci to catch, doing it sweetly so far. 2 lengths clear of Cavalieri, who's set down now and trying to get after her. These two have been 1-2 almost every step of the way, with Hoosier Philly at the rail in third. Tarifa under pressure, losing a bit of ground in fourth. Then comes Ultimate Authority and Alpha Bella. They turn for home, and Ricci is asked to finish the job. Has a 2-length lead with a furlong left to go. Cavalieri is trying hard to close the gap and is getting to Ricci now. Ricci, Cavalieri. Ricci and Cavalieri head and head. Cavalieri on the outside and Ricci. Cavalieri gets her, and Cavalieri with an unblemished 4-for-4 record.
A distant third in that race was Tarifa. She is running today. We're not handicapping the race on this podcast, but on Friday at Keeneland, Tarifa is part of the cast for the Double Dog Dare Stakes, which is also in this distaff division. So Santa Maria on the West Coast, Double Dog Dare on Friday at Keeneland. Really nice addition of that race. Not only Tarifa in there, just FYI, the 2-year-old champion from a couple years ago. You've got a Colt in there. You've got Candied, a pretty nice field at Keeneland going today in the Double Dog Dare. Scott, did you look at that one? Do you have any thoughts on that one as we'll sneak in a little bonus Friday pick?
I did look at it. I also have a late pick 4 analysis up on the blog if you happen to catch this before it's too late, which includes the Double Dog Dare. And I agree, it came up pretty strong for a grade 3 with a couple of comebackers. I went with just FYI, JP. I think she struggled to relax last time, but it was off a long layoff on a 1-turn mile. I think it's all or nothing. If she relaxes early, much better, and gets back to her best, I think that she'll be tough to catch. I could also see her finishing last, but the 7-2 price would be pretty fair in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a tough race. I really think there's 4 legitimate win contenders in there if you're looking late in the day. Hopefully you have some opinions around that if you need to spread more in the Double Dog Dare. Let's spread our wings now to the Mid-South and head to Oaklawn Park for Saturday's 11th race on the card. This is the Express Bet Race of the Week. You can get my full written analysis for this sent to your email inbox. Sign up for the email newsletter, expressbet.com, and on the First Bet website as well, and get on that weekly email list for the marketing newsletter. You can also pick it up in the blog section, expressbet.com, and at news.first.com. Defending champ in this race is Skippy Longstocking. He's
as they
back.
round the
He
fourth
won it
turn.
a year
County
ago.
final a half length in front. Skippy Longstocking looms large on the outside. Reincarnate sent hard. He's in trouble. He's been passed by Highland Falls, who picks up the running, and Skippy Longstocking with a big burst. Skippy Longstocking at the top of the lane just opened up to a 3-length lead with a nice acceleration. Highland Falls is charging into the second position. Reincarnate third, but it appears he's beaten at this point with a furlong to go. Skippy Longstocking, Jose Ortiz in complete control, and Skippy Longstocking skipping home to a big win in the Oaklawn Handicap. Highland Falls second home.
The Ortiz brothers switch seats this year. Irad will ride Skippy Longstocking in this year's edition of the Oaklawn Handicap. Tyler Gaffleone was aboard in his last couple starts, the Pegasus World Cup and also the Challenger Stakes, which he won for the 3rd year in a row at Tampa Bay Downs. But Tyler out nursing for Tyler, is it a foot injury? Yeah, he's got a foot injury, I believe, ankle. Yeah, so he's out right now. Irad Ortiz takes them out. So Keeneland on Saturday, just a note, Irad Ortiz will be here at Oaklawn. Flavian Pratt will be at Oaklawn. And there is a third one, Luis Saez, who's at Oaklawn. So 3 of the top 4 or 5 jocks in the standings will be at Oaklawn on Saturday and not riding at Keeneland. Now, Scott, let's talk Skippy Longstocking in here, defending champ in the Oaklawn Handicap. Does he get it done again? He's coming off the same prep as he did last year, coming off the same kind of win. Is he as good now at 6, or does he have the right field to match up with, or do you see somebody else moving into the mix?
I like him in this spot. Is he as good as he was last year? I think he is still. He's done, he did what he had to last out, and I thought he ran a very strong race off the layoff in the Pegasus World Cup to finish 3rd to White Barrio and Locked, who would be, heavily favored, both of them in this field. I also think, it's going to be a bit of a rider's race because I do think there's plenty of speed in here. Last year, he stopped right off the pace, but I think that's unlikely with Tarantino and Banishing. First Mission and Skippy Longstocking and Alexander Helios, the 3, morning line favorites, all have kind of similar running styles to an extent. I think I trust Skippy, though, to be able to, be more tactical, definitely than Alexander Helios. And First Mission has to prove it to me still. This was a horse I was so excited about in the Preakness Future wager, which is coming up again soon. We got in good on that at 8-1. He was going to win that race and got scratched, but he really has not lived up to full expectations, in my opinion. So to me, you've got the proven commodity in Skippy, who's got the win over the track, as we just showed. 10 for 30, the class of the field. And as we've talked about a lot, the two of us and others is this horse has just been handled so well and managed so well. This is a really nice $1.25 million spot for him.
In handicapping this race, I saw it with a really hot pace, like you mentioned. There's a chance for this one to really cook. And the two Asmussens are the horses that are going to come from off the pace. Red Route 1 and Disarm. I trust Disarm more, even though he's about the most untrustworthy, big name, high profile animal we've seen in the last year or so. He always looks like it's about time for him to have a breakout race, and it doesn't seem to happen. I'm hoping second off the layoff, off the allowance. This is like old school. Second off the layoff, allowance race on the comeback into a stakes. So he wasn't exerted last time. He beat a good horse in Ben Duke, so the neck margin shouldn't really throw you off that much. I'm looking for Disarm maybe to kind of finally have his day and finally get a decent price. He always seems to be bet, and I'm going to give him a shot in here because I think he'll be value, and I think he gets the right pace set up. He's going to save ground at the 1 1/8, being inside. Red Route 1 never runs 2 good races in a row. If you look at him, he's won 5 races in his career. The next 5 starts after that, he's finished in the money once. And I think it was a 3rd place finish, and the other 4 are off the board. He just can't seem to pair up 2 good efforts in a row. So that's how I kind of almost defaulted into Disarm, but I've liked him in the past. I don't know how much I like him in here, but I like the situation he's going to get. And if he doesn't win this one, he's never winning one.
I think I've said that a bunch. Now, this is a horse I loved going, we all kind of gave big looks going in, to the Triple Crown season, at least 2023. It seemed like Steve really liked this horse. He ran 4th in the Derby, but as you mentioned, just kind of has never lived up to the ultimate expectations. He can do it, though, at 5. If any trainer can get a horse to finally peak later on in their career that sends horses to the Derby regularly, it's Disarm. Do I trust Keith Asmussen as much as the guys riding the favorites? I don't, but he should get a good trip, like you mentioned.
All right, that is the Oaklawn Handicap, Saturday, race number 11 from Hot Springs. Let's switch venues next up as we go around the country. We'll go to Keeneland on Saturday. This will be the final Saturday card of the season at Keeneland, as we mentioned. They run this week, yet Friday and Saturday, and then closing week at Keeneland will be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to wrap up the 15-day spring session. So, feature races on Saturday, the Elkhorn and the Ben Ally. The Elkhorn is for the turf marathoners, 1.5 miles on the grass. Race number 9 is the event in here. And Scott, we both landed on the same horse in here independently, but we're on Rebel Red in here. You make the case for this Cherie DeVoe trainee.
Well, I think the first thing I want to look at in this race is that I really think if limited liability is 8-5, that creates opportunity. Not that I don't think this horse can be competitive, but the only recent win is at 2 1/16 miles on the lead, Kentucky Downs. So this horse is far from a win machine, and it's not like he really stands out ultimately on class. So I think there's some opportunity if the prices remain. And Rebel Red to me is a horse that I don't think is more of a stayer than he is a tremendous finisher like some of the other Cherie DeVoe horses we've seen without More Than Looks, obviously one that comes to mind recently. So I think the added ground will help here. I think he gets a good trip, pretty honest pace, but not crazy. So I thought, as you're about to show, I believe he had one of his, best efforts of his career, if not the best, over this turf course.
And Boyce, then Degree of Risk up on the far outside, who's still in 4th. Cowboy Justice 5th behind Horses. And then Villain, who is running along in 7th. Here comes Freedom Trail with a late run. Boyce is in front. Here comes the favorite, Rebel Red, and it's over. Rebel Red just right on past the leaders. Rebel Red, Jose Ortiz to win it.
Not exciting for Kurt Becker on that call. It was just kind of casual, and hopefully Rebel Red makes that same kind of casual move to win the Elkhorn Stakes. I'm with you. Jose Ortiz rides here. Again, we mentioned 3 of the top 4 or 5 riders in the standings at Oaklawn. Jose is the other member of that quartet battling for the top of the standings at Keeneland this season. He should have a very, very big Saturday with those other guys away. Look for Saturday at Keeneland. Jose Ortiz, Joel Rosario, John Velasquez would be the 3 real big name riders that could make a big run on the card. Velasquez is going to ride the 9, missed the cut in this spot, missed the cut for Cherie DeVoe, so it could be a DeVoe exact in here, the 1 and the 9. And then as for Joel Rosario, he is aboard Anglophile in here for Brian Lynch. First start at Keeneland for that one. He would be a long shot in this particular spot. But as you said, vulnerable favorite in here, limited liability. I agree. I put that one in the second slot. Seems to just kind of flatten out. And so for this horse, I think second, third place finish is kind of more likely what we can expect out of limited liability. I would use the horse in the unders when you're playing tries and supers, maybe exactas as well. But as far as the top end, give me Rebel Red in here along with Scott. That's our pick. In tandem in the Elkhorn. When we agree, I feel pretty good about it. We agreed on 3 long shots together on the same Wednesday card, and 54-1 ran a good third. We got a winner out of one that got bet down, and then the other one was 20-1 and should have won and just got an awful ride and trip. So I'll let you bash the jockeys. I can kind of stay clear of that, but we didn't have any luck in a couple of those rides.
It was, it's one of those deals on the turf where at the moment, you're trying to save ground, which we know is imperative in these races, but it just felt like there was time for him to get out. But obviously, that's not what people are here to hear.
Oh, they love grievances, though.
Yeah, but not one that not one from yesterday that we're just
look, hey, grudges don't die with handicappers. That's the thing. I can still we can still talk about horses that we got screwed out of 15 years ago, and it won't go away. So that's the way it works when we play the game, and but we come back because we love it. Let's go to Keeneland's 10th on Saturday, the Elkhorn, and then the Ben Ally. The Ben Ally, the 10th race, a mile and 3/16 here. Get us tuned up for the Preakness at a little mile and 3/16 distance. Field of 7 in this particular spot in the Elkhorn. I went with the one in here, San Siro, for Brendan Walsh, who's having himself incredible meet here at Keeneland. Everything he sends out is running really live. If they're not winning, they're running strong. San Siro, for me, a horse coming out of the New Orleans Classic, was a big price in that one, but I'm going to give him a shot in here. I think kind of from a pace standpoint, gets to save some ground, kind of a mid-pack trip in here. There looks to be a little bit of speed with Prince of Power in this particular spot, but not a ton of speed. You don't want to be too far out of this. And I think the horse you've got on top in here, Tennessee Lamb, should get a pretty good trip too.
Yeah, that was the thinking. I'll just piggyback on San Siro. I also like here as a use. That New Orleans Classic was up against it from a class perspective as well as a race shape perspective. Touch Upon a Star was the Louisiana bred that, didn't go super slow, but had things very much his way. They basically ran 1-2 around the track. So San Siro really, was not expected to make up the ground on those top 2 that day. I went with Tennessee Lamb. I don't think there's anyone in here that is coming in with better, lower on the morning line, more class, etc. That is really in great form. And I think Tennessee Lamb is a little sneaky here. I think he's in the best form of his career, third off the bench as a 4-year-old. And I think he's proven at this point by trying both surfaces that he is a dirt horse, not a turf horse. I think you can pretty much see that on any metric you're looking at and in the results. But I think he's going to, really take to the added ground. Rusty Arnold all along here has made it, clear that this horse seems to be a stayer, if you will. And to your point, Jeremy, at 8-1 with the trip that I'm expecting him to get, and with the likelihood that Prince of Power is not able to handle the mile and 3/16 at anywhere near 8-1, I'm pretty excited about Tennessee Lamb.
All right, I'm going to test your musical chops here. You know the other half of Tennessee Lamb, right?
No, I mean, the Tennessee song that I think of is Tennessee Jed by the Grateful Dead. What is the Tennessee Lamb song?
I'll be your Dixie Chicken. You'll be my Tennessee Lamb. Little Feet,
Oh,
or
that
the
sounds-
Garth Brooks version if you go a little bit newer. But Little Feet, we got you
Yeah,
stumped on that one.
Once you said it, once you started getting into it, Little Feet. Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to sing it. We're just going to play it. Let's see Tennessee Lamb in action at Gulfstream. Pete Aiello with the pipes.
Upstanding just lost the lead. On the far outside, Tennessee Lamb surging forward to take over the lead. Upstanding, he's very game. He's fighting on here. Back to third. That's a dropping back Awesome Beast. The Thor is underway. They come home for the wire. If you back Tennessee Lamb, you can go collect. Tennessee Lamb takes advantage of a beautiful pace scenario to win, going away by 5.
Well, let's change gears now from Keeneland and the Ben Ally to Aqueduct, where they run the Bay Shore Stakes. This used to be part of the Wood Memorial card, but Bay Shore's got its own spot on the calendar. Field of 5, 7-furlong sprint for the 3-year-olds. Good prep race here towards the Woody Stevens coming up on Belmont Stakes Day at the Belmont meet at Saratoga. Some of these horses here would fit nicely into that spot. Bay Shore, 150 greater, though. They'll be stepping up when they get to the Woody Stevens. Who do you like in this spot, Scott?
Yeah, I would be hard pressed to think they're not going to be a little bit outclassed in here unless one of these horses move up. But I'm going to go with the inside horse, Pascaline, 2-1 second choice. Not a horse that I'm in love with here, but wouldn't be a terrible thing to see a West Virginia bred win a New York Open Company stake race. And I think he hasn't been on the lead in his 2 previous races, but I think with Kendrick Carmouche aboard, I think he will find his way to a nice forward trip in here. Not a ton of speed. And obviously he comes in 2 for 2. The win last time against Studley Do Right, who is in the Federico Tesio, which we'll talk about in a moment. So pretty live group. He beat him that race over the good main track.
Yeah, that was back in September at Laurel. It was the off-the-turf Laurel Futurity. Let's go back and see the Arnaud Delacour trainee in action.
Not my first rodeo's battle, but drop back at Pascaline on the outside, accelerating now. Here's Pascaline, the leader. Pascaline, Reggie Runs Rogue is sent on between horses and diving down to the inside. Pascaline in front from Reggie Runs Rogue. And next is Studley Do Right in third. A furlong left to go. Pascaline is kept to task by Victor Carrasco in front by 2.5. Studley Do Right, last-ditch effort. Big race from Just a Fair Shake on the far outside. Reggie Runs Rogue down to the inside. Pascaline and a photo for second there. Maybe to Studley Do Right. Pascaline in the Laurel Futurity.
Now, we'll see if the wagering shakes out here, but Pascaline is the second choice in the morning line at 2-1. The favorite is Moplex at 9-5. Started the career a house of fire with 3 straight wins, including the Sanford and Open Company, the funny side against fellow New York breds, but has lost the last 3. One race this year, the Gander, 3rd beat and a half. Not a bad race in that one at a mile. Cutting back a little bit in trip, Jeremiah Englehart, Manny Franco team up with Moplex. That's the 9-5 morning line favorite, but again, trying to snap a 3-race Ziggy and get back to the winning end. Pascaline's never been beaten, going to go for 3 for 3 if successful there in the Bay Shore. But looking at that field, you're right. Any of these horses that want to step up next to the Woody Stevens are going to be introduced to a new kind of animal when they get to that race, you think, from what they've seen so far to this point. Let's go now to the Preakness Preview Day at Laurel Park in Greater Washington, D.C. About a half-hour trip without traffic, with traffic 45 minutes or so over to Pimlico as these horses get ready for potential Preakness Day dates and Preakness weekend dates with a trio of stakes races that we're going to handicap, a bigger stakes card than that, in fact, on tap at Laurel Park. And again, we've got that $2,500 hit and split late pick 4 Saturday at Laurel. I've got written analysis up for these races on the websites at ExpressBet and at news.first.com. So be sure to check that out for my pick 4 ticket on Saturday. We will look at the King T Leatherberry Stakes, 5.5 furlongs here. The King T Leatherberry, named for one of my favorite trainers of all time, number 4 on the all-time list of career victories. King T Leatherberry won 6,500 races. Only a handful of trainers have ever won more than he has. Best known for Ben's Cat, a 26-time stakes winner. I mean, it was funny because, Leatherberry trained for 40, 50 years before Ben's Cat came along. That was kind of like his last swan song, and it was the best horse he ever had. The King T Leatherberry, a 5.5 furlong turf sprint, will get him ready for the Ben's Cat. This is an appropriate prep for the Ben's Cat stakes coming up on Preakness weekend. Who do you like in this one, Scott?
Well, I think there are some intriguing price options in here, and I definitely thought it until I turned the page to get to number 10, Determined Kingdom, who does appear to stand out here, and I do like an outside trip in these turf sprints with, speed stalker types. Determined Kingdom, they spent $190K for this horse at the Keeneland November sale last year. They being the estate of R. Larry Johnson and Michael Trombetta, was in the Phil Scoventhal barn and has had a great career thus far. It seems like they spent the money back in November. Steady work pattern leading up to this, clearly pointing for this race to set him up, hopefully, I guess, as well for a win in the Ben's Cat, one would think. But Determined Kingdom looks to be a little bit above this field, and the fact that he gets that favorable forward trip and he has a 3-for-5 record over this course makes him that much tougher.
Turf sprint record is as good as you're going to find, because these are not races that are easy to be consistent in. They're about course condition, they're about post position, they're about trouble, they're about pace. 15 starts in turf sprints, 10 wins, a second and 2/3. It's a phenomenal record for Determined Kingdom. Last time we saw him was during the fall meet at Keeneland. Let's go back and take a look at that one when with trainer Phil Schoenthal.
Back toward the inside, and then midday Image. Bad beat Brian. Gets a narrow lead, but has company. No Nate Hudson. Determined Kingdom moving on either side. Determined Kingdom trying to squeeze through toward the rail, and now takes the lead a deep stretch. No Nate Hudson is there. It is Determined Kingdom, though, with the lead. No Nate Hudson in second. Determined Kingdom with that move to the inside wins it for Luis Saez. No Nate Hudson.
Got clear late in that one. This should be just a throwdown to the wire. Big field in here. You have Whitty, who likes to come from the clouds. He won this race from the parking lot last year by a neck. He gets Jaime Rodriguez riding on Saturday for Ann Merriman, or Elizabeth Merriman. And Whitty's a horse who then came out of this race, the King T Leatherberry, and ran second in the Ben Cat Turf Sprint at Pimlico on Preakness weekend. So he's just trying to get tuned back up for what he does. Whitty, a good Mid-Atlantic turf sprinter, and you look at him, and he's got 19 for 29 in the Exacta Lifetime. He's another one that it's easy to root for, but you need a little bit of help with a horse like Whitty with where he comes from a lot of times.
Without question. I mean, you see it, though. You don't see a lot of horses that are able to win races on the dirt and turf at a pretty high level. He has 3 wins on both surfaces. Obviously, it seems like he's better on the dirt, but if they go at it early, you know, which is not what I have planned in mind for Determined Kingdom, he's obviously one that should be rolling.
Prince of Jericho, interesting entrant in here. I thought he was one of the more talented sprinters in Maryland. I was disappointed how far he got beat in the General George when he backed up back on President's Weekend. That was 7/8 of a mile on a muddy track. He's never tried the turf, but it's Brittany Russell. Her barn is just so high percentage and strong, but they're going particularly really well now. Sheldon Russell rides there. If Prince of Jericho takes to the turf, he'll be an interesting addition to some of these grass races in Maryland over the course of the season, because you've got good turf racing there in the turf sprints, and then he's got the options, obviously, to go back to the main track. Prince of Jericho's by Munnings out of a Medaglia d'Oro mare, so I don't know if he's going to handle the turf or not in there, but if this horse does, Prince of Jericho certainly on class. He's one of the better sprinters in the region.
He is. I just when these horses, and it makes sense that you would keep them on the dirt, obviously, but when they've had 20 starts, they come in off a couple of pretty solid efforts, to be fair, winning the Fire Plug and then the 3rd place effort, the General George. It just feels stabby to me, but maybe hopeful, maybe something, feed it. You never know why they would move to the turf, but I usually would need a good price on these types of horses. Probably a little stubborn with them, to be honest, when they're when I should use them as bigger prices, but I understand where you're coming from without question.
They may be looking for an off-the-turf scenario, too. I haven't seen anything in the racing press or talked to anyone specifically about that. They may have entered if the race comes off the turf, we could be 2-5 in an easy spot. That could be a tune-up towards the Maryland Sprint coming up for Prince of Jericho, potentially on Preakness Day, and get you on that same timing that we're talking about, 36 days, 35 days out from the Preakness when they run this race on Saturday. Okay, let's go next to the Henry S. Clark Stakes. It's race number 10 on the card. Henry S. Clark here, a prep for the Dinner Party Stakes, which is the big prep race, or the big turf race, I should say, typically run immediately before the Preakness Stakes. The Henry S. Clark, a mile on the main track. You've got Neat in here, and this is a well-traveled runner, Neat, for trainer Rob Atras.
Yeah, I just think Neat, as you mentioned, well-traveled, but I just think has been taking on tougher competition. The question is he going to be able to bounce back in the Kilroe Mile? I made this selection before I saw the morning line, 5-2 morning line favorite, I believe. Not the price that I would necessarily want, but not necessarily surprised. He's won 6 for 12, and he won it, his only start over this course. To me, he's the clear class of the field, and if there's any sort of honest pace, he's the one to beat. But there is a slight chance that Ocean City, who's been gelded for the aforementioned Brittany Russell, could find himself loose in the lead. And if perhaps that ultimate equipment change gives him a new lease on life, he could, get a little bit brave out there. That was probably my biggest concern to the Classy meet.
Signator comes in from Tampa Bay Downs for Shug McGahee, kind of an old school, second off the layoff and going from an allowance, stepping up, very Shug-like, kind of form cycle there for Signator. Be closing from the back of the pack. Fulmineo, a classy runner in there we haven't seen since the Virginia Derby, but has done some good things in his career. A Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf alum for Arnaud Delacour. Certainly Fulmineo with a good post position in here could factor, but Neat's probably the horse to beat. I think you're right on that. The Kilroe Mile, obviously a really good race last time out at Santa Anita, where he ran sixth in that race, where he backed up. It was a good race in terms of the competition that he was taking on. Not necessarily a great performance for him, but we've seen him against high-level competition run big races. You go back to Saratoga last summer when he won the Hall of Fame Stakes.
At the top of the stretch, it's Barksdale who's been there throughout. Laginos let loose in the center of the course now, coming with a nice rally from the back. Buttercream Babe is coming alive. Army Officer drops back, and here's Neat with good strides into second. 16th pole. It's Laginos trying to finish the job a half length. Neat is surging right on the money. Here is the line. Neat gets up to win.
So let's take a look at some other contenders potentially here in this race. The Henry S. Clark, and I think Fulmineo, Signator, and Neat are the three deep opposition that we want to take a look at in this particular spot, Scott. I went three deep in my pick four ticket in here. I think all three have a chance to win this thing.
Yeah, to me, it's, Ocean City is the price option potentially in here. I understand Fulmineo in terms of class, and Delacour extremely capable off a layoff. In fact, some of his best numbers are there. To me, I'm going to let Shug beat me in a couple of spots over this weekend, this being one of them. He's just 1 for 18 over his last 30 days. His horses at Keeneland are not necessarily firing. But to me, I'm going to see one with Signator, who did get the win last time on the move to the turf, but I don't feel like he moved up from a figures perspective or any sort of move up from the dirt to the turf. So that's something I would have looked for with him.
All right, one more stakes to look at on the Laurel card on Saturday. It's a win and you're in for the Preakness Stakes. The Federico Tesio, named for the famed Italian breeder of Rebo and many of the titans of the turf over the years. 1 1/8 on the main track at Laurel Park. It's a 1 1/8 oval, so it's one turn around the circuit. Short run into the first turn because of that and the placement of the finish line and the start line here for this race. So post position can be important. Pay Billy was really impressive in winning the private terms. He's going to have to overcome being towards the outside in the gate here. If he can handle that, he's a horse who's got a good pressing style. He's going to be pretty effective against Scott. I know you got Pay Billy on top. Are you looking for a repeat effort of the private terms, or do you think he has to win it a different way from out there?
Well, I think he's going to get a pretty good trip. I think this field might spread out a little bit more than that 5-horse field did, which I think will benefit his chances. And he did overcome a 3-wide voyage into the first turn, so it wasn't as if he had a ground-saving trip. I guess my biggest question with him would be the 1 1/8, which is a question for a lot of these. But I just think he's going to get the perfect stalking trip off a wild card in Kentucky Outlaw. And I think that's the trip that he wants. And I think if he's able to get the distance, which, and I'm at the 5-2 morning line price, you don't really like a lot of ifs. Again, handicapped this race before I saw the price, but should have known. I just think Pay Billy is the likeliest to run his race here as well as the likeliest to win it.
You talked about that X factor, Kentucky Outlaw. 2 starts at Parks, 2 dominant victories, 1 sprint, 1 route in allowance company. Now the stakes rise for a $12,000 son of Outwork. Owner, trainer Felissa Dunn, her husband and her have a very small operation. I was doing some reading on this horse because it was very intriguing looking at the past performances and watching the replays. Just 12 horses in their stable. Their son picks them out, kind of their bloodstock agent, and they've done pretty well. 19 starts, 7 wins. I mean, 37% wins for a small mom and pop operation. Kentucky Outlaws 2 for 2. We'll see if Felissa Dunn can get this one stakes black type and maybe into the Preakness Stakes. Be a hell of a story. NBC would tell that story quite often if this horse can make his way to the win and you're in Preakness. Kentucky Outlaw, definitely the most interesting member of the Federico Tesio cast. You do have Studley Do Right, an accomplished horse, won the Tremont last year, but he was kind of a win early 2-year-old, and the form's kind of gone a little south on him. He's based at Laurel Park, but he hasn't been at Laurel hardly at all since September. He's only run, 2 of his 10 races at Laurel. He's been a road warrior for trainer Jerry Robb. He gets back home. Sacred Thunder's a horse who's been through all the dances here. It's a competitive field, but it was Pay Billy last time who kind of separated him from the locals. If it's not one of the shippers, Pay Billy, if he runs this back, he beats the locals again.
As Tony Eclipse is under heavy pressure to stay, Pay Billy comes for home with the lead. Pay Billy narrow lead. Baby Dukes is second, and Sacred Thunder on the outside. Next is Tony Eclipse and Crab Daddy. They're down to the final furlong. Pay Billy's got the stamina and pulling away under Raul Mena to open up a 3, almost 4-length advantage from Sacred Thunder. 9-5. Pay Billy. Pay Billy. Scores clear at the end of the private terms. Sacred Thunder.
The first 2-turn race on the Maryland Road to the Preakness, the private terms. They're back at 2 turns on Saturday. The other big name in here is Surfside Moon, coming off a runner-up effort in the Withers Stakes. Failed to mention him. He's actually my top pick in here. He was second to Captain Cook. He was 33-1 in the Withers. Captain Cook came back and acquitted himself with a decent performance, won 4th in the Wood Memorial against much tougher competition. There's nobody like that in this race. So I think if he stacks up 2 lengths off Captain Cook, he should be able to match up with these. Surfside Moon, Michael Sanchez will be over from Parks to ride this one. We'll see how he's done pretty well with the shippers coming over to Laurel at the current meet, 4 for 10. So interesting riding assignment here. It'll be the first time he's aboard this one, and coming off a bullet workout at Fair Hill. What do you make of Surfside Moon in this spot to Tesio?
Yeah, I give him a big shot. I mentioned the one concern, or the main concern with my top pick, Pay Billy, was the distance. I don't have that concern with this horse, who also I think will be getting a ground saving off the pace trip. So while it's far from creative, I think those two are by far the likeliest winners. And this horse finished pretty well in that race, and I thought it made a good account of himself moving from turf to dirt off a layoff. And, he's back, home in the Mid-Atlantic. I don't see why he shouldn't fire another big shot.
I got to admit, though, I'm rooting for Kentucky Outlaw. I kind of want that horse to be a little freakish. That'd be fun. Long-legged runner, the 1 1/8 might kind of suit. We'll see. I mean, it's a shot, but that's what the game's about. Sometimes when we get these rags to riches horses, nobody thought Rich Strike would win a Kentucky Derby. That doesn't mean that this horse, $12,000 horse, can't win a Federico Tesio. So we'll see.
You mentioned the stats.
It should be a fun day though, Saturday at Laurel.
You mentioned the stats. I just wanted to piggyback to give this these low profile connections a little more love. 75 starts dating back to last year, 32% positive ROI.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
Kentucky Outlaw, be on the lookout maybe Saturday in the Tesio. That's going to wrap up our handicapping for this Saturday, April 19th. Good luck to those of you playing this weekend, and for everybody on First Bet and Express Bet, a lot of handicapping tournament play this weekend. We've got the $500 Laurel Park Challenge tournament coming up on Saturday. You can play at Express Bet. Again, tournaments played only through the Express Bet platform, so be sure to check that out. Oaklawn Handicap, Preakness Preview Day, final Saturday at Keeneland, a lot cooking. Opening weekend of the Hollywood meet at Santa Anita, so we've got a lot to talk about. I'll be back on Tuesday to recap it with the It's Official podcast. Scott's going to have more content over the course of the weekend, handicapping the big races around the country, so be sure to check out at expressbet.com and at news.first.com for his updated writings this weekend as well. I want to wish everybody a happy Easter. Scott, I'll give you the final word on the way out.
Yeah, happy Easter, Good Friday to those watching this on the holiday. And we're getting close to the Derby, 15 days away, the biggest race of the year. And, nobody loves it more than you and I, and really starting to feel that fever a little bit further away than where I had it in the past, but getting super excited. But let's build the bankroll for the big week in a couple of weeks.
All right. For this Dixie chicken and that Tennessee lamb, we're going to say goodbye. Have a great weekend for Easter, and we'll talk to you next week.